Welcome back to the Parkside Podcast. I'm your host, Autumn Hawthorne of Stroud Region Open Space and Recreation Commission, and you're listening to our Voices of the Landscape series, a special project running from now through July 4th, 2026, in partnership with America250 PA Monroe County. This series celebrates the people, stories, and natural places that define Monroe County, the voices who shaped our land, protected our waters, and built the outdoor spaces we love today. As part of this celebration, we're inviting everyone in the community to join the 250 for 250 challenge. Walk, paddle, bike 250 miles in Monroe County's outdoors between now and July 4th, 2026, as we honor the 250th anniversary of our nation. It's a chance to discover new trails, revisit favorite parks, and quite literally walk the landscapes that hold our history. Today's podcast guest is someone whose work has shaped those landscapes in a profound and lasting way. We are honored to welcome Edie Stevens, an early environmental advocate whose efforts in the 1970s and 80s helped ignite conservation efforts in our region. Edie is a founding member of both the Brodhead Watershed Association and the Pocono Heritage Land Trust, two organizations that have protected countless acres and waterways across the Poconos. We'll talk about her personal history with local land, the birth of these environmental organizations, early victories and challenges, and what she hopes future generations will carry forward. Edie, welcome. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you. It's so nice to be here.
So when you think about your early years in Monroe County or in the Poconos, what outdoor place felt like home to you?
I grew up on a farm in Paradise Township on what was then called Timber Hill Run, a creek, and I just early on spent my time outdoors in the woods and exploring the creek, and that's probably where it all began. I didn't realize it at the time.
And so what sparked your desire to get into the nitty-gritty of conservation?
I wasn't involved at all. Actually, there was nothing to be involved with as I went to high school. I suppose there was something in my college years, but I graduated in 1959, and the Clean Water Act was passed in 1972, so there was nothing really.
It wasn't a conversation yet.
There wasn't part of the conversation. Streams, rivers were there for our convenience to carry away our waste. And I probably didn't question that until a neighbor came to my mother's, who lived on the farm, and said, "Your stream is polluted." And we said, "What does that mean?" I think I was in college. "What does that mean?" I looked up pollution in the World Book Encyclopedia that we had, and there was no entry for pollution.
Wow.
In the encyclopedia. And I got married in 1960, had 2 children, was somewhat involved through the League of Women Voters in Armonk, New York. And then we moved back to the Poconos my husband and family, and I moved back to the farm in 1977. I think I've strayed from your question, but we came back, and I still had children, of course, to raise, and Nancy Shakaitis was very active at that time. I didn't know much about what she was active in. Eventually learned that of the Tox Island Dam. When I first heard of a big lake on the Delaware River, I thought, oh, that'll be fun. And as I learned more about it and learned what the Tox Island Dam would do to the free-flowing Delaware River, and watched Nancy's opposition from a local Delaware Valley organization to county commissioner, I was very impressed with what one person can do with her involvement in to protect our waterways, and that's probably where I started my involvement.
Yeah, it's so important to have somebody who's willing to speak out against what seems like a popular good idea.
Sounded like a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
Till I learned more about the problems with it. I can remember a league member from Bethlehem, Gertie Fox, explaining to the group I was with what the cost-benefit ratio was and what it meant that the benefits have to exceed the cost of a federally funded project. And it's supposed to be greater than 1, that cost-benefit cost ratio.
Mm-hmm.
That was very educational moment. We'd heard about that ratio for years, but it didn't mean anything. And when I learned what the costs would be,
Mm-hmm.
In order to come up with the benefit that was projected, for example, the number of visitors, the benefit of the visitors to a Tox Island reservoir, would pave over all of New Jersey if you had all those visitors coming at once. You know, one of the things that I remember from that one particular meeting. So I think you're going to talk more about Nancy and her opposition to Tox Island.
Yes.
It's a story that everybody needs to hear.
Yeah, we're going to have a future podcast episode all about Nancy and her work with Tox Island. So our listeners can look forward to that in the future. So during that time, what else was happening here in Monroe County?
Well, as I said, prior to the Clean Water Act, streams and rivers were places to dump your waste. And we certainly had that here in East Stroudsburg when there was not anything I was aware of at the time, but some firm making, at one point, Army uniforms and dumping their excess dye into the creek. Mm-hmm. There's a story there that I can't tell you. I don't know much about. I just know that it's part of what happened. Mm-hmm. There's a Superfund site along the Brodhead from gasification of coal that happened in Stroudsburg back in the 50s, I guess. So there's been lots of local examples of how we've abused our rivers and streams.
Yeah, and on one hand, we didn't know, right? We didn't know.
We didn't know that it wasn't always going to be wonderful and clean mm-hmm. and beautiful. They're also one of the stories on the history of the Brodhead Watershed is the railroad coming through mm-hmm. and clearing the hillsides for wood for railroad ties, and what that meant to the siltation of the creek and the end of fishing in the 1890s. It was always going to be there for us. No need to take care of it.
Yeah, until finally we get some data, some scientific information that starts to clue people in that
we better
might
take
actually
care
have
of
a
it.
problem.
We better take care of it, or it's going to be gone.
Yeah. So, what did some of the early conservation efforts look like here in the county? Did the county themselves get involved?
Yes, the county. I don't know who the commissioners were. I worked closely with a woman named Donna Pitts, who was a staff member, a very young woman staff member at the County Planning Commission. Out of some so maybe it was a recreation plan, because we didn't talk about open space. Mm-hmm. We had plenty of it. Both the Pocono Heritage Land Trust and the watershed associations were proposed as something that would be helpful to have here in Monroe County, and the Land Trust was the first to form.
So let's talk about those organizations, and maybe for our listeners who might not be familiar, what is a land trust?
Well, if you want to preserve your land, if you want your land to stay the way it is, always, forever, don't trust your children. A land trust is an organization that comes in as a third party to be the watchdog that that carries out your wishes by holding what's called a conservation easement. It used the same right sometimes is called development rights, as though every piece of property should be developed, and so it has the X amount of value as a development property. But I think more conservation easement, it is more popular now, and the land trust is the third party that makes sure your children don't develop or sell it for development, because it pretty much takes away the right to develop. Land trusts also hold land, own land. They don't have any independent funding. They have to raise their own money if they're going to buy land. So that's part of the land trust or the open space story in Monroe County.
So what did the formation of the Pocono Heritage Land Trust look like?
Very, very small. And Donna was very involved with that. Donna did all of the nitty-gritty homework of filing for tax-exempt status so you can accept the donations of land or money. And there were a lot of, the Poconos is full of wetlands. And there was a lot of development proposed, bad development proposed, that would basically dig out a wetland and create a lake and put the fill along the edge and sell house lots. That was going on in the Poconos in the 80s. And there came to recognition of a need to protect some wetlands. So Pocono Heritage Land Trust began its first piece of land that was held was a development up on the Pocono Plateau, and the developer was required to protect some wetlands, and there had to be an organization to help the developer do that. And that's how the land trust began. It was a state required, for some reason, I cannot remember how, but some reason the development needed to give the wetlands away to somebody who would protect them. And I can remember meetings in Harrisburg when that happened with Donna. Donna and I would go once at least to Harrisburg to talk about what we can do with the land trust to see that wetlands are protected.
And it's interesting, we're talking about a land trust and wetlands, but it's almost more reflective on the water quality and why we want to protect the wetlands to keep our water in good quality too. So they go hand in hand.
And that is really a very important function of wetlands. One of my stories at the time was the whole business of protecting wetlands came about through a state law, but nobody was really paying attention, and I kind of pushed for that to happen. And talking to the Secretary of what was then DER, Eric Davis, and the furor in the development industry, often led by the Pocono Builders Association, was terrible. I mean, the uproar over worthless wetlands, why do you want to protect them? I said to Art, maybe we just shouldn't have started this.
Oh, no.
And he said, oh, no, I have engineers who went to Penn State to learn how to drain wetlands. So we had to do something to get the value of wetlands recognized and protected, or we weren't going to have rivers and streams. Yeah. We would have storm channels.
Mm-hmm. Warm, rancid storm channels with no animals living in them. So was there a piece of property early on in PHLT, or any time in its history, that the preservation of that property has been particularly meaningful to you?
Well, the preservation of my own property, perhaps.
Yeah, absolutely. And can you walk us through what that process looked like?
Yes, at the time I really learned more about land development and how and what was happening to the land I loved around me. and I decided I would donate a conservation easement on my property. At the time, the Pocono Heritage Land Trust was struggling and not doing well. So I chose Wildlands Conservancy as a group that I had worked with on wetlands protection and good land use planning. They're down in the Lehigh Valley. Their head offices are in Emmaus, I believe. They just were more professional, so I worked with them to place a conservation easement on my property. And they have the staff and the funding. They asked, I donated my easement. In some cases, land trusts have money to buy an easement. I donated mine, and land trust staff will tell you, and as they told me, it would be irresponsible of us to accept your easement without asking you to help us manage that easement forever and ever and ever. So they asked me for a donation, a cash donation, or in some cases it's an annual donation, depending on the person's circumstances. So Wildlands has come and inspected my property every year to make sure I'm not putting a development on it. So that's kind of the. My personal experience has been very useful, as I encourage others to do the same.
Yeah, absolutely. So if somebody wanted to, if they had a piece of property and they wanted to put it into a conservation easement today, what would you recommend their first step be? I would
think their first step ought to be to call Louise Troutman, who's the executive director of the Pocono Heritage Land Trust. She's very good. The trust is thriving.
Yes.
And doesn't have any money. So they definitely will accept donations.
Yep.
But she does a good job of applying for grants. There's no money locally. I shouldn't say that. We should talk about the county open space bond issue and local open space taxes, okay? Probably over 25 years ago now, there was a county open space bond issue for $25 million. And that means the voters, I believe it was a referendum, and the voters approved the county borrowing $25 million to buy open space. There was a very, very well-run campaign to bring that issue to the voters, and it passed overwhelmingly, I believe. And the county did a great job of putting together a committee to manage the grants, did a good job of setting up regional commissions that would buy some land for active recreation and buy some land for passive protection. And getting outside funding to match the $25 million. It was not, there weren't $25 million in bonds issued right away, but over the years that the county has maxed out that $25 million in debt. We need another county open space bond issue. So as part of that, as I said, the regional commissions bought land. And also some townships, municipalities developed their own open space fund. So we did one in Paradise, which has a lot of money. And that's based on, it could be based either on local earned income tax or based on property tax. And each municipality has a different program. Stroud Township has a great program. And Stroud Township, they manage theirs well, and I cannot tell you exactly the details, but they've done a good job of parks, which are managed here by Stroud Region.
Yeah, which, to bring it full circle, Stroud Region Open Space and Recreation Commission is one of those regional groups that was put together after the bond referendum. Yeah, so then we cover Stroud Township and the boroughs of East Stroudsburg and Stroudsburg. Yeah. So it's certainly, I'm happy that it happened. And we're still here working on some of the same issues, 25 years later plus.
One thing we haven't done is find a way to connect the pieces that we have. I think you're working on that, Autumn.
Yeah.
But Paradise has a number of nice parks and preserves. Some places you just should preserve. But there's really very little thought about how do we connect these? How do we do something other than, as I say, walk around in circles? They're big enough so you can walk around in a circle and see something different all the time, but even so, it would be nice to find a way to connect people in Paradise with the people in Stroud.
Without having to get in a car.
Without having to get in a car.
Yeah. Our trail system is definitely the next big thing, but it's been the next big thing for a little while. We gotta get some of these trails put together. And often, like our Levee Loop trail system here in the Stroud region, we use waterways as our guides for where we're going to take those trails. So again, it's this meshing of how important the land is alongside the water, and that kind of leads us to our next organization. So after PHLT, we got the Brodhead Watershed Association. Can you tell us a little about that?
Again, Donna Pitts was very involved in the organizational development of the Brodhead Watershed Association. She did that as a county staff member of the Planning Commission. We had a very well attended introductory meeting. Should we form a watershed association at ESU? She managed all of that. I was told by somebody from outside the region they'd never seen a better organized or attended meeting for the formation of a watershed association, and that was Donna's work. And the idea grew from that, which was in 1989, August of 1989.
So what does a watershed association do?
It's an educational organization, nonprofit. All that paperwork was taken care of. We accept donations to the Brodhead Watershed Association are tax deductible. If you look at the original bylaws, the land trust was not set up as a membership organization, was not set up as an educational organization. It was set up to buy land or hold easements. And the Watershed Association was set up to be the educational arm of conservation in the Brodhead Watershed. Because the Brodhead Watershed is big, but it's not the whole county. So there are smaller watershed associations for the Tobyhanna-Tunk. That, again, is more of a grassroots citizens organization, Tobyhanna-Tunkhanna Creek, and the Aquashikala-Pohopoka Creek. So
that is a name.
Yes, isn't that a name? And BWA did a number of had a number of grants to develop the science that we needed to say this is what we need to do if we're going to protect our waterways. One of the things that is the BWA is proudest of is its volunteer stream watch program, which varies, say, from 50 to 70 volunteers watching 70 to 100 sites throughout the Brodhead Watershed, and sites and volunteers change daily, if not hourly, but that's what any volunteer program is like. You always have to keep training new people, introducing new people to learning about their streams.
And if somebody is listening and they're interested in volunteering for Stream Watch with BWA, what is the job of a Stream Watch volunteer?
Well, as the program has evolved, it now has one training session a year, usually in the spring when people are tired of winter and we're ready to get out in the water. And again, the evolution of the program is that it's now testing for conductivity, which is a measure of salt. and discovering that we have some very troublesome hotspots where conductivity is high, chloride is high, which in the major contributor to chloride in the stream is road salt, or Walmart parking lot salt, or your driveway salt. Mm-hmm. We're using too much salt. And we are working with the Stroud Water Research Center, which has done a lot of, which has, for the last 10 years, been tracking salt applications and the use of salt in the Delaware Basin. They're a Delaware Basin organization. So it was a good decision to start looking at the problem and notice and seeing where hotspots are. For example, way up in the Pocono Creek headwaters, Route 380 crosses the little tiny headwater streams. And one little tiny headwater stream is so high in conductivity that well, it's as high as the ocean.
Wow.
And it doesn't change over the summer, which means the salt is built up in the groundwater and is feeding that little tributary, and therefore the people's wells who might happen to live near that tributary. Mm-hmm. So those are the problems that have come about. Streamwatch, I'm sorry, that was my particular thing to talk about. But yeah. Streamwatch involves you volunteering, going to a training, and checking monthly as much as you can. Don't go out when it's icy. Don't go out when it's flooding. But as often as you can, the stream site near your home. Mm-hmm. And providing the data to the BWA, and another very active volunteer, Wendy Lichty, enters all the data into a database which is available publicly.
And again, it's good that we have this data now so that we can look back on previous years, see how things are changing. And it's drinking water. It's also, how is that water going to affect our animals that live here? Our plants in the area certainly aren't evolved for salt water. So we need to know how these things are going to impact us in the future.
I had somebody once say, why are you worried about a conductivity level of 900? Normal is about 50. But why are you worried about that when it's 10,000 in the Philadelphia area? And my response was, well, I don't have fish in the Philadelphia area. We have a wonderful resource here of the fishery in our creeks. And that's really where the Brodhead Watershed Association grew out of. A number of the fishing clubs, I hadn't realized how many fishing clubs we had. When I got started, a neighbor was a member of a couple of clubs, and they buy up sometimes the land, sometimes just top of bank to top of bank. It's kind of what Grandpa sold back when he was trying to live off the land as a farmer, and he sold to these rich guys from Philadelphia. You can fish in my stream and you can pay me some money and I'm happy. Well, fish clubs are sometimes resented because they own a lot of the stream, but they've also protected the streams. And so a group of them in the Brodhead Watershed formed what they called the Brodhead Protective Association. And their weapon was litigation against new proposals to dump something in the stream. And after a few years of that, they decided, well, maybe if we helped form a watershed association and did some education about the importance of our streams. So they were very involved in getting the Watershed Association off the ground, and the Brodhead Protective Association no longer exists. Fishing clubs are supporters, but there's a lot of membership of 300 or 400 individuals. If you count the members of the club, people will say, oh, we have 1,000 members. Well, yes, but individual members, there's probably 300 or 400 that think protecting water is important.
Yeah, which is a great number, but man, everybody should think protecting water is important. And that actually brings me to my next question for you, which is that, today, if we're trying to get information out, we have social media. You post something and it goes out and thousands of people see it. We didn't have social media. How did you get the education out into the public?
Well, back then, we had a newsletter that went out monthly. Now, written newsletters are kind of a thing of the past. Good question. I'm not sure. We did keep townships involved. We did try to have the townships, municipalities appoint a member to our board who would take the message back. That was what people were appointed but never really took messages back. I really think the Streamwatch program as a way for people to get involved. Trout Unlimited members are very involved. We have a very good Trout Unlimited chapter here. If you're a fisherman, you should join. Even if you're not a fisherman, support clean water. The Pocono Record was a pretty good community newspaper at the time, had a weekly environmental column written when it began by John Sorreo, who worked for Skytop as a naturalist and did naturalist programs. Conservation District had a program at the Kettle Creek Environmental Center, has a good education program. In fact, their program for school kids is so good that Brodhead Watershed Association decided early on that we should focus on the adult population and the visitors, that school children are well informed, can be well informed by the Kettle Creek program.
Yes. So what were some of the challenges that BWA faced early on?
Well, nonprofits always faced the challenge of finding money to run. Of course, it was all volunteer for the first 10 years. We did have somebody that had the title executive director, but it was part-time and paid very little. John Riley was an very active hunter, fisherman, conservationist in Monroe County's. Family members are all through the county. John gave us office space in his building in Mount Pocono, and that stepped us up a bit. And then when that became too small, Mike Flood gave us office space in Paradise Township, near the Flood's landscaping business, nursery, farm stand. A little of the all. It's not owned by Mike Flood any longer, but gave us office space. And now we're at BWA is at Brodhead Creek Heritage Center, which is a building. It's on Stroud Township's Evergreen Nature Preserve.
Yep, for Evergreen.
For Evergreen, and Stroud Township really wanted BWA and Pocono Heritage Land Trust to move into the old golf club, and then a volunteer member that both organizations looked at the foundation.
Oh no!
And said, not a good idea. And many years later, much fundraising later, we have a beautiful building for both organizations, and now Penn Future is there as well. Small museum, a meeting room at capacity at 50. Sometimes it's at capacity. It's a lovely building, and Stroud Township owns it. We raised the money to pay off the mortgage, but it was good partnership.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's how we get everything done. Everything is partnership. Right?
Absolutely. Community involvement is so important.
Yes, yeah. And as you've highlighted a couple of times today, making sure that there are the people who are willing to use their voice, people that are willing to stand up and say, hey, I know this sounds like a good idea, but
let's do it.
Yeah.
Yes, I was thinking we had something called Save Our Streams. I had a button that says SOS, and but there was nobody there to keep track of the bank account, who send out the membership renewal notices. You might get $100 here and $100 there, but you don't have an organization just because you have a name. There's a lot of work that goes into making an organization grow.
Yeah. And so we need people who are willing to carry out this work in the future, right?
We do.
And so there's now a scholarship available for young people who might be interested in conservation, and I'd like to have you talk a little bit about that.
Well, a couple of years ago, when I retired from the BWA active involvement with the BWA, and a dinner, the BWA's annual dinner was held at Skytop, and I was honored. And as part of the dinner, people were urged to give a donation to the Edie Stevens Scholarship Fund. And a little bit of money was raised that way, and that was the seed money. I asked the Brodhead Watershed Association to please transfer that money to the Monroe County Community Foundation, and they did, and the scholarship fund has grown since then. Of course, I have to die for most of, I think, for the scholarship fund to really grow. So there's not enough money to give scholarships yet. We want to make it a permanent fund that will be able to fund a scholarship through the interest payments. So.
But other folks could contribute through the Community Foundation into the scholarship fund
and they
as well.
Can contribute to the Community Foundation.
So we don't have to worry about your help on it.
Earmark it for the Edie Stevens Environmental Action Scholarship Fund. I've worked with Samantha Holbert, and she keeps reminding me we need to get more money so that we can do an interest scholarship, and we hope it will grow.
Yeah, absolutely. So what do you hope to see in our future of conservation here in Monroe County, whether it's somebody who gets the scholarship or just anybody? What do you want them to be working on in the future? What do you
Land and water, land and water, land and water. It's what we have to do. Early on with the land trust, I said, we're protecting land. Who are we protecting it from? What are we protecting it for? And those questions still are out there, but we need to protect developable land, because that's, the Denver County Planning Commission Director Carl Kindred said, everybody wants the best land. That's where farmers want to farm. That's where builders want to build, because the best land is the place to put your septic tank. Mm-hmm. And you have to protect some of the best land as well, along with the worthless wetlands and the swamps that we need to drain and whatever. So, and that's the only way. If we don't protect land and we don't protect it as natural habitat for wildlife, we won't have clean water.
Do you have any advice for somebody who might be interested in getting involved?
Be ready to work hard. Be ready to be disappointed and lose battles. And somebody I like to quote, I think it was Muir, the founder of the Sierra Club, who said every environmental battle you lose is lost forever, and every one you win will be there to fight again another time.
Is there anything that we haven't talked about that you'd like to mention? Excellent.
Oh, I do want to tell you one success story.
Absolutely.
Because my education, I mentioned this earlier, my education in protecting water came from the stream on my property, which used to be called Timber Hill Run, which is my father named my property Timber Hill Farm. And the neighbor came and said it's polluted. We had to figure out what. And the pollution came from both the borough of Mount Pocono and Mount Airy Lodge, a hotel. And I fought it. I fought to protect it. And the Pennsylvania Fish Commission, Mount Pocono has done a wonderful job of, they have a waste authority, and as a result of one of the lawsuits, their president of their board said, take the discharge out of the creek. And it is out of the creek for the summer months when they bought land and do a spray irrigation discharge with the water clean enough to put in the creek. And I would say, as a result of their work, the stream is now named Forest Hills Run, and it is now classified as a Class A wild trout fishery by the Pennsylvania Fish and Boat Commission, something that just happened this fall.
Well, congratulations on that. That's really exciting.
Enjoyed being here. Thank you for asking. I'd love to talk about successes.
Yes.
And I hope others will pick up. Others have, and that's great.
Yeah.
And we need more. Always need more.
Always. Well, thank you, Edie, for joining me today and for sharing your wisdom and your stories and your extraordinary legacy here in Monroe County. The landscapes we love, the streams we fish, the forests we hike, the open spaces that define Monroe County are protected today in large part because of people like you who stepped forward before it was necessarily easy or popular. And to our listeners, if you want to visit some of those organizations, the Pocono Heritage Land Trust website is phlt.org, and the Brodhead Watershed Association website is brodheadwatershed.org. And this episode is part of our Voices of the Landscape series, created in partnership with the America250 PA Monroe County, as we celebrate the 250th anniversary of our nation. There's lots of great events coming up in 2026 for that, so be sure to keep an eye out. And don't forget to join the 250 for 250 challenge. Walk, paddle, bike, explore 250 miles of outdoors in Monroe County between now and July 4th, 2026. And be glad that you have those spaces to enjoy thanks to our environmental pioneers here in the county. Thank you for spending time with us today. This has been the Parkside Podcast, and now it's time for you to go outside and play.